I made this point a little bit going along in our discussion about coronavirus, but I want to try to make it in a very punchy, pointed way, and that is this. You can hear all sorts of people who are conservative, who, generally speaking, love the Constitution, love liberty, believe in America, but in this coronavirus era, they are the absolute militant, must socially distance, must wear a mask, must comply with the law. And I want to make a couple points that really, really matter to begin to plant the seed for why you should be able to speak up against that and to resist that. The reason we got started on social distancing and wearing masks was because of the really bad data that came out of England that had models that were just grotesquely inaccurate, predicted millions of more deaths and hundreds of millions of cases and all sorts of suffering, things we could not imagine. And we had similar data come out of the University of Washington. So in response to that bad data, we made bad policy. The whole notion was just basically freeze the country, try to restrict the spread of this virus by making everybody stay at home. We've talked about this on the show. You can go back and listen to past shows about the evidence that's come out now by Dr. David Katz at Yale, Dr. Atlas at Stanford, Dr. Georgatos at Stanford. Many doctors have been saying, who are microbiologists, immunologists, saying, now that we have the real data, now that we're not having to base policy off of bad models, but we're looking at real data, we overreacted. We have not in American history ever, as I've been calling the shutdown, we have not imposed house arrest on the healthy in any other virus. We quarantine people who are highly contagious in some circumstances because we want to stop the spread, but we have agreed to house arrest for the healthy in this country, all based on bad data. The shutdown was based on bad data. The social distancing requirement was also based on bad data. It sprung from the argument that the model is so bad, the virus is so contagious, that the only way to save America and even have life on Earth again is if we all stay away from each other. Social distancing is like in the law, they say you can't introduce evidence in trial if it's fruit of the poisonous tree. Basically, if you did a search, police did a search without a warrant, they come up with evidence, you can't put that evidence in trial. They say, is anything that the prosecutor is trying to introduce fruit of the poisonous tree? It's a well-established principle in criminal law. Back to this case, social distancing and wearing masks are both policy choices we came up with, which are fruit of the bad model, the poisonous model that was inaccurate. There is no reason for law-abiding Americans to think that they need, in order to be safe, to continue to engage in social distancing or wearing a mask, with a couple of caveats. There are people who are very susceptible. If my mother were still alive, because of their senior or they have some immune deficiency problem, if my mother were still alive and lived in the senior home near our home, I would, going there, do whatever they asked. I would wear a mask. I would want to make sure they felt safe, want to protect my mother. And other people who are vulnerable. So there is a caveat for if you're really in a position, or if you are very senior, or if you have some immune deficiency issue, then you should protect yourself, just as you did before the coronavirus came along. You took care of yourself given your health status. But we are surrendering liberty in this country when we are agreeing to bad policy, social distancing, wearing a mask, when we are just trying to live and function in our lives and go about our everyday life, open our business, go to work, function as free Americans. We have to start rejecting social distancing and masks, because it was as we are resisting the shelter in place or house arrest for the healthy, because it all sprang from the bad models, just factually incorrect data in the models that we followed. It's very important to understand, if you get that the data was bad, you get that the data now is indicating, yes, it's contagious, but you have a very low lethality rate. We did not have to do all that we did. We can start to live and function more normally. But the other side effect, I keep talking about all the side effects of this virus. One side effect has been how quickly we surrender liberty. How quickly we say, well, I'm going to get up today and wait and be told if I'm allowed to go to my favorite store because it's still shut down, or am I allowed to go to this restaurant? We've reversed our thinking and thought we're waiting to be told what we're allowed to do. And that is un-American. It's inconsistent with the idea of America. Another really bad side effect of this coronavirus has been the emboldening of some officials, local officials, police, sheriff's departments, engaging in otherwise unacceptable, aggressive, ridiculously terrible behavior toward free citizens because they've become infested with the fear. They've bought into the pandemic of fear. And I have, Matt, the very wonderful producer, has a clip I want to show you very quickly. This actually happened in New York City, which you're going to watch. You'd think these police officers were taking down a bank robber or a serial killer. This, which you're going to watch, is the police in New York dealing with someone who failed to socially distance. Matt, the wonderful, has this clip, I do believe.
No, nah, y'all go to jail. Go to jail. Move back. Move back right now. Move the back right now. Move the back. Move the back. What are you flexing for? Don't flex. You allow stuff too. Look. He ain't even do nothing. He ain't even do nothing. He ain't even do nothing. Look. He ain't even do nothing. He ain't even do nothing.
Okay, the only good news that came out of that astonishing display of violence, and by the way, that little, I don't even know what to describe it as, rat-a-tat-tat little noise, that was a taser. A woman is being arrested and tased for not social distancing. But the good news, one little good news was out of New York City, the Police Benevolent Association of the City of New York put out a tweet. That association calls for the end of NYPD News policing of social distancing as the weather heats up and the pandemic continues to unravel our social fabric. Very insightful statement. The pandemic is unraveling our social fabric. Police officers should be allowed to focus on our core public safety mission. If we don't, the city will fall apart before our eyes. So even that police agency is recognizing you have hysteria, you have un-American conduct by sheriffs, police officers, mayors, county judges, governors, emboldened with the idea because they have the power to do it, they will, and they're continuing to take away the freedom of Americans and, almost more reprehensibly, engaging in violence toward people who basically decided they got a little bit too close to somebody else and didn't socially distance. We can't have this in America.